Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 667 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'm going to be speaking with Ryan. He's an adult who has type 1 diabetes. He also lost his sight later in life because of diabetes retinopathy. Today, Ryan's going to share a story with us, and Ryan would like you and everyone listening, including the manufacturers of diabetes devices, to know that accessibility is incredibly important. While you're listening today, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, please take a few minutes today to go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and take the survey. Your answers, which will not be hard, trust me, easy survey, those answers will help people living with type 1 diabetes. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Find out more at contournext.com/juicebox. Get the meter that my daughter uses. The podcast is also sponsored today by US Med. If you're tired of your diabetes supplier and you'd like to get better service and better care, go to usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits check right now and get started with US Med.
Hi guys, my name is Ryan Hui. I am the program lead of Come to Work for the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. I am 35 years old and I've been type 1 diabetic since I was 7 years old. I am currently a pump user and I actually live with a condition called diabetes retinopathy, which has taken away a lot of my sight, but I'm not letting it slow me down. And you know what? We're going to talk about that today.
Cool. And before we do anything serious, and that was a lot of important, serious stuff right there, I'm just going to get out of the way, letting you know that every time you pop up on my calendar, I think of that Hong Kong Phooey cartoon from when I was a kid, which I'm sure most people
I get that a lot. I do get that a lot. It's funny.
It just messes with me because I know you're coming on and you've got like a really interesting story and, you know, it's a fairly serious topic. And in my mind, like it just doesn't feel that serious right now. So,
you know what? I have a good sense of humor about it because let's face it, I'm visually impaired, but I just do funny things that I wouldn't do if I had sight. And you got to have a sense of humor about it, or else, you know, I'd be a shut-in and just, you know, I got a lot to give. I'm young-ish, we'll say, and you know what? I think I got a lot still left to learn and a lot to give, especially in the diabetes world.
Cool. All right, Ryan. So let me try to make sure I understand everything. You were born sighted?
I was, yes.
All right. And if I use bad terminology, please let me know as I'm going, because I really don't have the first idea of what I'm doing here. So, but sighted seemed like something I'd heard before that sounded right. And the loss of vision, was it genetic? Was it diabetes related? Was it a blend of the two?
Great question, but I really hate this question for a number of reasons. And so like, I don't know who's listening, but I'm very careful to say that it was diabetes related because there's so many diabetics out there that I don't want them to think it's inevitable, because it's not. I think I drew the short stick. So it was diabetes related, but I'm a little bit different. Usually there's warning signs, there's treatments nowadays that, you know, can help out and stem the loss or even stop it completely. Right. So that you can keep your usable vision or, you know, full vision. Right. This happened to me about 10 years ago. I actually, was bowling the night before, drove home completely fine. I wore reading glasses, but that was nothing out of the ordinary. And I woke up the next morning and people were texting me and I wasn't answering them. And they finally called me and like, Ryan, why aren't you answering your phone? And I said, I couldn't see the screen. So I'm like, you know what, maybe it's just dark in here. I opened the windows, turned on the lights. It's, 10 in the morning, but still couldn't see. And eventually this was a Sunday. I went to the emergency room, and at that point, they looked in my eye and said, "There's something serious going on here." And that was, like I said, Sunday. By Thursday, I was up in Toronto at the big hospital, having some surgery done on my eyes to try and save my sight. But unfortunately, at that point, both of my retinas had detached.
Oh my gosh. So diagnosed at 7, 18 years later in your mid-20s, and you just wake up one day and things are gone. Let's ask about, so you're Canadian, which I can tell by your general pleasant demeanor and your accent. Plus you work for a place in Canada, which would be a weird pull if you were like in Texas or something like that. But your healthcare system and being diagnosed that long ago, they put you on regular and MPH, and did you stay on it forever? How did that go at your diagnosis? Do you recall?
Really interesting. So over the course of the years, and I'm going to age myself here, but there's been several different times that I've changed all kinds of, whether it's insulin, counting carbs, the big chart, you get 4 fruits and vegetables, you get 12 proteins, whatever, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then there was even like the weird pyramid you had to use, and like counting, I don't even know what this is, but like a kilojoule back in the day. But insulin wise, I learned very quickly. And you know what? I try to be a glass half full kind of guy, but diabetes helped me grow up a lot faster. So I learned to mix my insulin and give myself injections. And of course, back then there was no pen. It was, syringe. Okay, you got to test your blood sugar. Don't touch the strips with your hands, because then they're not usable. And then it's like, oh, you got to wait 60 seconds, and now it's like 4 seconds until you get the reading, right? So yeah. I was on regular and MPH. And what's interesting, in Canada, we used to call the regular, the Humulin R, we called it Toronto. I don't know why. I have to ask my diabetes educator about that. But it was actually really cool because I learned to give myself injections on an orange. So like they'd say, okay, drop the insulin, you get, 4 units of R and 15 units of NPH. And it was a breakfast and a dinner kind of thing. And that was years and years and years. And then finally Humalog came out, and I got switched over to that, which I'm still on today. But NPH was a slower kind of, I guess, wean off. Okay. And I did Lantus for a while, but now because I'm on a pump, it's straight Humalog.
So is this prior to like in-home, real portable blood glucose meters, your diagnosis, or did you have one?
No, I had one, but it was probably, I don't know, the size of a television remote. Like it wasn't, I mean, they say portable loosely, but it was more like, this is huge. You can't carry it in your pocket, right? So my mom was carrying it around in her purse because it was just too big, right? And it's interesting because all the kids were so curious because I was so young. Oh my God, what are you doing over there? Like, why do you get to do this? Can you do this to me? And it's, like, it was actually kind of helped because I was the cool kid. Like, look at all this stuff, but we didn't realize, hey, Ryan, you can't eat sugar. This is a very fickle disease. You don't know what's going on inside your body, that sort of thing, right? So I was eating peanut butter. I always played organized sports. I was eating peanut butter sandwiches and drinking Gatorades on the hockey bench or in the baseball dugout, and other kids got water and like, why does he get that? And nobody really understood.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, before I go forward, I want to tell you that in my attempt to Google kilojoule, all I came up with was a DJ named DJ Kilojoule. So that's not going anywhere for me.
It was very short-lived, that's for sure. And then I had this big poster board that I had to hang on the fridge. And it's like, okay, Ryan, for breakfast, you get, 2 fats and 4 starches and 6 vegetables and 1 milk. So it's like, okay, if you had a bowl of cereal, you had to match up the picture. Oh, I get a quarter of a bowl of Cheerios with half a cup of milk, and that's my starch and my milk. It was really, it worked. But now looking back at what we know now, I'm like, what a disastrous way to treat something, right? It's just, insulin twice a day. Where, the insulin eventually wears off. Well, what am I doing in between that? And I'm eating a whole lunch in a whole meal in between that. So it's interesting how we've progressed.
Yeah, I actually, and not to take another diversion, but I was pretty sure, but I wanted to double check. Most of the research that went on around insulin initially, Banting and Best and all that stuff, that happened University of Toronto. So I'm guessing that was probably pretty big source of pride in Canada. And
and 100 years,
yeah,
100 years of insulin this year.
Yeah, no, it's coming up. It's really exciting. I actually have the coins here. Somebody was very kind. Canadian listener sent me the commemorative coins about insulin.
Oh, well, thanks for supporting, because that's a great. And I'm a volunteer for Diabetes Canada, and I just did their Lace Up event. So I ran 10 kilometers, and then I ran over 100 in the month of September.
No kidding.
As we raised money, and it was kind of, we can't wait 100 more years for a cure, right? Like we're treating a disease, and for lack of a better term, we're not really getting anywhere, right? There's still complications. There's still this. There's unfortunately still people, passing away, and there's kids getting it. And I hate to see kids get diabetes. And it's, what, I'm hoping that, even $1 can get us a little bit of a foot forward.
Well, excellent. Listen, I'll tell you that I think the real problem at the moment is the disparity between care, right? Like, there are people who are diagnosed today in 2021 that still receive regular NPH, and that, kind of very old fashioned, care plan. There are other people who have access to amazing technology, and you look at their A1C and their variability and their time in range, and you might not even know they had diabetes. And the difference between those people can be, financial. Sometimes it can be just the luck of having a doctor who understands it well enough to explain it to you or to introduce you to the tools. It's you're right. It's you don't think about it as much, but there's just such a chasm between understanding and not understanding. And there are a lot of problems in between how people come to that information or never find it.
You're absolutely right. And you know what? The big thing, even within countries, it almost depends on where you live. Yeah. Right. And it's sort of, even within Canada, there's certain provinces that I can live in and get exceptional care. And then there's other provinces where things are only partially covered or not covered at all. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, you're almost, in a sense, and I'm being facetious here, telling me where I can and can't live. In a sense, within Canada, right? Within my own country that I'm a citizen of. It's like, if I live in Ontario, I get this. But if you live in Manitoba, you don't get this. Right. So it's like, why? I mean, facetious question here, but why would I ever move there if I'm getting the coverage I'm getting in Ontario, kind of thing, right? Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing. And I know Diabetes Canada, and I hate to mention them again, has done a really great thing. And they brought the CNIB in, and they're doing a care plan called Diabetes 360, right? So it's like, hey, let's get a national framework within Canada so that if you live in Vancouver or if you live in Halifax, you get the same care, and everywhere in between. So it's like, this is covered. There's no gray area. It's black and white kind of thing. And I think that's what we really need, and what needs to be adopted, not just within one country, but worldwide, right? Because even I'm actually, to go back to your previous question, I'm actually a dual citizen of Canada and the US. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because my mom lives over in the US, and she's a diabetic. She's type 2, but some of her medication is, when she tells me what it costs, I can't believe what she has to pay just to essentially stay alive and to be able to eat food every day. Right. It's mind blowing.
Listen, Canadians have enough trouble, as we heard a minute ago from that loud bang. You just had to defend yourself from a beaver riding a moose. So why should you also have to fight about what insulin costs? It's not fair, honestly. You live in a tundra. It's a wasteland. Am I right? Just frozen, like you probably live in a city somewhere. I don't know.
Well, I'm actually, I'm actually in the big smoke, as we call it here. I'm in Toronto today. So that's, it's not my usual dwelling, but it's the biggest city in Canada. So it's quite a change. And if you hear the clicking, that's actually my guide dog, who has a mind of his own, CNIB trained Joe, walking around and flip clop and everywhere kind of thing.
That's cool. So the moose are more gentrified. That's excellent.
Yes, we've trained them to live at home.
That's lovely. I really wish you would have just said that you had a seeing eye. I don't know anything else that was like, indigenous to Canada, but we'll accept that it's a dog. So is it fair to say that by today's standards, and let's think about for you, you're using an insulin pump, you have a glucose monitor?
I do. I use the Libre. So it's the continuous blood glucose monitor, but it only tests when I scan my arm. So it's like a flash. Looks like a couple of quarters. Yeah. Yep. A couple of quarters on the back of my arm, and I scan my phone over it, and then my phone reads it out loud to me, because the meter that is produced with it will display the sugar level, but it doesn't audio like tell me with sound kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. But my point is that your care now is more in line with what I would consider, top of the line care now. And is it fair to look back and say that if you had the care you have now back then, would your vision be different? Or have they given you any indication of why it happened to you so quickly? Because it's my guessing, and I obviously don't know, but that people listening are thinking that there must have been, those years must have been really hard on you. But or is that not the case? Can you explain that part to us?
I'm really lucky because of the people that support me around. I wouldn't be where I'm at without them, whether it's a diabetes nurse, whether it's my endocrinologist, my family, even my friends. They really support me and help me out when they can, right? So that's first and foremost. Like I said, I wouldn't be where I am today. But it's interesting when you use the word top of the line. I do believe I receive really good care, but there's still some things that are lacking. Like I know. Going back to like I played scholarship baseball in the States, right? So it's like not that I was unhealthy. Like, yeah, maybe I drank a couple of extra Gatorades here and there, got some sugar in me, but for the most part, my diabetes care was pretty good. My sugars and A1Cs were all in check, and it's just like I said, I don't know, something caught up to me, and I finally my vision just went right. There's no rhyme or reason, but I don't want to look back on it. Not that I won't answer questions, but it's like, let's see how we can move forward. Right. Like I tell people, and this is very just out there, but I'm blind. I'm not dead. Like I still can walk around, my legs, my arms, my mind still works.
Yeah.
And I really like what we're doing here. But the thing I talk about when you say top of the line care, my insulin pump is tens of thousands of dollars, right. To purchase it.
Right.
But I only use 11% of the functions because I can't see the screen. So like I can't count carbs with it. I like put this into perspective. I can't even tell you what my battery level is on my insulin pump because I can't see the screen. Yeah. So there are some services that are lacking, right? And that's kind of what brought us together, right? Where, with the CNIB and with Diabetes Canada and all the pump manufacturers, your Medtronic, your Ipso pump, Tandem, all of those, we're looking into how can we create something, whether it's an app, or whether it's a fully accessible pump, just to get it out on the market, because, just not even with me, just with diabetes retinopathy in general, like there's vision issues or potential vision issues for every single diabetic out there.
I think that even beyond more catastrophic problems, just age in general for people, I think your fight could end up in, inadvertently maybe, but very directly being the fight of every person who eventually needs glasses just to see something in front of them. I think all the time, I mean, my daughter's only 17, but I think all the time about like, what's going to happen to her? Like, what if she gets lucky, right? And she just lives into her 70s. She's still going to have type 1 diabetes. And I watch my mom try to, mute her television. And I think, what if my mom had to check her blood sugar or change a CGM or put on a new insulin pump? I don't know that she could do that. And I think that your issue puts a real spotlight on it because of your age, because we're talking about it in a time prior to when we expect to talk about it. Like if I said to somebody, oh, like my 75-year-old mother can't blah, 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 they'd think, oh, that makes sense. But when it's you go, God, there's a 35-year-old guy that can't, what are we going to do for him? But I think it's, what are we going to do for everybody? Like everybody at some point in their, like I had perfect vision my entire life. I mean, really, like I never imagined that my vision would be an issue for me. And a few years ago, I just suddenly couldn't see the things in front of me without glasses on. And that's not going to, I mean, it might get better. It's not going to get better. I'm sorry. It might get, more severe. I don't know. But what if I had to do those things and that was part of my struggle? Are there answers? Like, what do you find that's helpful to you?
Again, just a lot. You're asking for a lot of help and a lot of memorization at this point. And it's interesting you bring up, my age, right? Because I'm in that weird middle age where I remember before the internet when your telephone hung on the wall and had a cord. And now I also remember where, hey, I got this computer that fits in my pocket and does pretty much whatever you ask it to, right? And I think back, and what if you handed a 12-year-old diabetic the meter I had to use 20 years ago. Like they'd laugh at it, right? But and then on contrast, what if you handed someone like your mother, if they have to test a blood sugar, what if I hand them my blood glucose monitor and they're like, what is this? There's no screen. What do I do with it? You know, it's interesting how we have to sort of cater to and take into account everybody, like you said. And I think that's the thing that everybody is missing. It's not, hey, let's make a specific thing for one group of people. Let's make it accessible for everybody. I mean, because even somebody that has their vision might prefer not to take their pump out of their pocket, right? Like let's use the sounds. I can use the sounds, and it makes it easier, right? And you might not be visually impaired, but like audio things make things easier. Or let's reverse the contrast. If it's light background and dark print, let's make it a dark background and light print. Let's make there's some options out there, right? Because again, I don't work for Apple. But I can take an iPhone or any of their products out of the box and start it up and immediately with no help, set it all up and use it. Like, why can't we do that with other things, right? Where it's like, I have to FaceTime somebody, or I have to have my diabetes educator or somebody with sight even to just change a battery on my pump, or, daylight savings is coming up. So for someone to change, I can't change the time. And yeah, it might not make a difference if 1 hour, but like, let's say I travel to Europe or Hawaii where there's like a 6-hour time difference. Well, that's going to make a big difference on when my insulin is getting dispersed and how much is supposed to, right? If I'm sleeping, not sleeping, but I can't change that on my own.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of different things that I guess people just take for granted. And I understand that, but it's people like the CNIB and everybody that's helping out with this project. We need to get that universal design into the pump and thinking about how can this help everybody, not just, a visually impaired perspective.
Let me ask you to put context to so I'm going to try to understand what it is you're seeing or not seeing through your eyes. So when you have this issue at first and you just wake up one day and this is happening, your retinas have detached. Was that what ended up happening? Is that from what does that, I guess? US Med is a diabetes supply company. They are A+ rated with a Better Business Bureau. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. They carry everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs, including Libre 2 and Dexcom G6. US Med always provides 90 days worth of supplies and fast, free shipping. But I've been ordering diabetes supplies for a very long time, and I know what you really want to know. Are they going to be a pain in the butt, or are they going to ship me my stuff like they're supposed to? Well, US Med prides themselves on white glove treatment. They want you to have better service and better care than you're accustomed to. If you'd like to give US Med a try, go to usmed.com/juicebox and get your free benefits check right now. Or, if you prefer the telephone, 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide, the #1 distributor for Omnipod DASH, fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys. And they have over 1 million diabetes customers served since 1996. Aren't you tired of getting messed around by your supply company? I know I am. Speaking of diabetes supplies, why don't I tell you about my daughter's blood glucose meter? It's called the Contour Next One, and you can learn more about it at contournext.com/juicebox. Here are a couple of things that you'll find when you get to the link. Pictures, words, and links. I'm just kidding. There's a link on the front that says buy online. If you'd like to pick up a meter now at, say, I don't know, Amazon, CVS, Kroger, Target, Rite Aid, Walgreens, Walmart, you can do that right at my link. Or you can just learn more. Find out about the test strips, which offer second chance testing, meaning if you were to touch the little blood with the testy strip, I don't want to be too technical, and you don't get quite enough, you can go back and get more without ruining the accuracy of the test or wasting the strip. This meter is everything you want it to be. It's small and convenient. It's easy to carry. The screen is easy to read. The buttons are easy to use, and the light is bright for nighttime viewing. Most importantly, it's legit accurate. Super duper accurate. Again, I don't want to use too many technical terms here, but we use the Contour Next One blood glucose meter here. It is hands down, without a doubt, no bull, the best meter Arden's ever used. Arden has had diabetes since she was 2 years old. She is almost 18. This is my favorite meter, and it's hers. Hers. Come on. And it's hers. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Don't let the fact that I can't pronounce hers detract you from what I've just said. There are links to Contour, US Med, and all of the sponsors in the show notes of your podcast player and at juiceboxpodcast.com. Just in case you can't remember, usmed.com/juicebox or contournext.com/juicebox. And I have a couple seconds here, so let me also remind you, t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Take the survey. Whoa, so much bass. All right, let's get back to Ryan.
I describe this to people a lot. So this is sort of, you have millions and billions of blood vessels in your eyes. And when they're fresh, they're like green leaves on a tree. But as you know, usually with diabetes, your blood sugars are up, down. It's a roller coaster ride. So those blood vessels begin to almost, in a sense, we'll say die. So picture the leaves in autumn on the tree. They're starting to turn red and orange, and then they get kind of crusty and then fall off the tree, right? Mm. So my blood vessels did that overnight, and they pretty much all died and then fell on my retina and detached it. So it was like pretty much a big weight falling on my retina while I was sleeping, and it detached it. And to put it into perspective, your retina is the consistency of an elastic band, but like you're taking it between both of your hands and stretching it as far as you can. Okay. That's sort of the consistency of your retina. So right now I have oil around my retinas, and it's holding them together. So it's kind of like liquid hand soap, but it stays in my eyes and keeps the retina attached, but I'm not gaining any vision back from that. And
I'm sorry, what is your level of vision? Like, how do you describe it to people?
I have what's called light perception. So in my right eye, I can't see anything. My right eye might as well be closed. In my left eye, I can tell you the TV's on, but I can't tell you what's on it. I can say there's a light on the ceiling, or, oh, there's a screen door over there. I can see a door or a window depending on the light that's coming in, but that's about it. Okay. So it's called light perception, right? Like if your fingers are maybe 2 inches in front of my eyes and you're wiggling 2 or 3 fingers, I might be able to tell you on a good day what you're doing. I find that in the morning, this is interesting, I can tell if my blood sugars are normal or a little bit on the higher side based on looking out the screen door and what I can see, because my blood sugar actually still affects what vision I have or don't have.
Better blood sugars you see better, higher blood sugars you see less well?
Yeah, loosely defined, right? We'll say, okay. Yeah. But yeah, of course, that's sort of what I can see. And you know what, in the summer, if we're standing outside next to each other, I might be able to see you, but you'd be like a blob. You wouldn't look like a person. You'd just be like a cloudy blob. And I might be able to say, oh, you're wearing a blue shirt, but you might say, oh, it's black, but I can see dark clothing, right? Okay. Kind of thing. Yeah. It works better, especially with the contrast of the light concrete. So, but I mean, I don't like to depend on that. That's why I got the guide dog, and that's why I got all kinds of training to kind of get me around, kind of thing.
So I'd love to understand your day then, specifically around eating and giving yourself insulin, those sorts of things. So you wake up in the morning. Can you walk me through it? What do you do?
Yeah, of course. So right away, I test my blood sugar. I take my smartphone and I open the app, and then I scan it over the tester on my arm, and it tells me my blood sugar. Then for breakfast, I tend to stick to a lot of the same sorts of foods. And it's a little bit more expensive, but I buy pre-packaged food. For instance, oatmeal, I don't buy the gigantic 10-pound bag. I buy the box of 12 packages because it's measured for me. So it's easier to count the carbs. Technology plays a huge role in what I do. So I have apps like Seeing AI. There's a couple of other apps out there that will actually read. I hold my phone camera up to the box and it'll say, this is Quaker Oats original oatmeal. And then I can hold it up to the back and it'll say, oh, here it's 10 grams of carb per pouch. It's this much sugar, this much sodium, that sort of thing. Right. So I actually use technology quite a bit, but I tend to stick to the foods that I know that are prepackaged, that are, like I'll eat a fruit cup of peaches rather than a peach. And I know that sounds crazy, but at least it's measured for me, because a peach could be so big and, I could say, hey, that's 10 carbs. Really, it's 22.
Right.
But I know in the cup of peaches, it's, 9 carbs. And that's what it is, because they've measured it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that doesn't sound crazy. Hey, that app, I'm looking at it right now. It does a lot of crazy stuff. Like, not just reading things. You can teach it your friends' faces and it'll tell you like facial gestures that people are making, and
it'll read money. So like if I go to China or to Europe and I don't know if they have Braille on their money or not, or even the US, it'll tell me that's a $10 bill US, or that's a $5 bill Canadian, kind of thing. So it's actually really cool. The app, is it perfect? Probably not, but you know what? It's the best we got, and it's really changed a lot of visually impaired users' lives, for sure.
But that's what you're talking about, is it's somebody to step up and do something that really, because that's an impactful thing for you, that app, I imagine.
I'd say I use it 50 times a day.
Yeah, I was going to
because even like reading my mail, it reads out my mail to me. It's funny. You can even, if something pops up on my computer screen that, my accessible technology doesn't read, because it happens from time to time, I can hold it up to the computer screen and sometimes it'll read that for me. And it does from time to time catch things on my pump, but I don't know why it doesn't like the writing on my pump for some reason. So it'll say it says something, but it won't tell me what it is. It's like, I recognize the text, but I don't know what it says, kind of thing.
Right. So, okay. So you stay on a pretty regimented diet, stuff that you know how to manage. What are your goals for blood sugars? Like, what are you trying to accomplish at a meal? Are you trying to stop a spike? Or are you just trying to keep it under a certain number without going low? Like, I'm trying to imagine that getting low is probably not a great thing for you. So like, what's your, I guess, like, what would you consider your style? Like, what's it you're going for?
I try to keep it more of a straight line than a roller coaster ride. So when I'm eating, I try to keep it, and this is Canadian, right? Because I know you have listeners across the world. So we use the millimole system. So like in range sugar is anywhere from, let's say, 4.5 to, we'll say, 8.5 is where you want to be. 8's getting a little bit higher, but you're not going to, it's not going to be, that's not a bad sugar, right?
Yeah.
I want to keep it under, like, let's say 11 when I'm eating, even if I go out for chicken wings with friends, right? Kind of thing. But you know what? That's not always the case. I would much rather, and I'm not a medical professional, but I would much rather go high than low, 100%. There's no question about it, just because of the treatment. I get very sweaty when I'm low. I feel it pretty hard.
Okay.
I run a lot on the treadmill and stuff. And so I always make sure I have stuff with me, and it's usually liquid. That's why I love the Juicebox podcast, because my fridge is full of juice boxes all the time.
My daughter doesn't want them cold. She hates them cold. She'll drink a juice box if she's low, but she wants it to be room temperature.
Do you know what? I think I'm good either way, but I think it's that insatiable hunger. Like, nothing's ever going to satisfy the low. So she wants to get it in as quickly as possible. But if you're drinking a cold juice box, it's going to hurt your teeth.
Yeah,
so I think that might be why.
Her whole life, she just never wanted them cold. Well, okay. So you're describing a world, like, for people living in America, like, where you're shooting for 80 to 150 ish, but you're trying not to go over 200 at a meal. And you're thinking that because not only do you, I'm guessing here, and I want to hear more from you about this. Not only do you not feel well when you're low, but does your sight impact that moment? Like, I'm trying to imagine how much of what I do in a panic situation is very I don't have to think about it because of the information that's coming in through my eyes. Like my daughter needed a juice box the other night, and we just didn't have them upstairs anymore. And in the middle of the night, I had to walk downstairs to get it, or something like that. And I'm taking for granted that I could just traverse the house in the dark, grab it, walk back upstairs. So does everything you do take more time? And does that time part of your consideration why you don't want to be fighting with a low, or what are the other implications?
Yes and no. So like obviously things will just take me a little bit more time in general in life to do, but you know what? I tend to sort of as a blessing, like I don't want to say my memory's gotten better, but I think I learned to depend on it more. Just like I learned to depend on my hearing and my touch a little more.
Mm.
If you think about like your home, I bet you could walk around your house. If you, I don't recommend trying this, but if you closed your eyes, I bet you'd still know where the coffee tables are, where the doors are in general, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do. I do what's called the zombie walk. I have my arms out in front of me if I'm not having Joe, my guide dog, lead me, and I'm touching everything. I'm sure my walls are pretty dirty, but you know what? It's a price you pay for not having banged up shins and stuff.
Right.
I lose all of my vision when I get low or when I get too high, and that's sort of, I don't want to say the first indicator because at that point it's too late. But that's sort of how you kind of know, right? And you know, many diabetics, I get agitated when I'm higher or even lower, right? And it's just you want to treat it as quickly as possible, but I have to stay out of the kitchen because if I'm in the kitchen, I'll go crazy when I'm low. I mean, oh, that box of Oreos, like I tend not to keep that stuff in the house, but if it's there and readily accessible, it's gone because you just have that insatiable hunger. And then after that, you look down, you're like, oh, now I'm 15. It's like, oh, what did I do? Now I got to correct that. You know, you go from extremely low to extremely high.
Sure.
And that's where you get into your body trying to adjust and things, right? And that's where you might get into some trouble with complications, right?
Do you live on?
And again, not a medical professional though.
No. Listen, Ryan, at the beginning of this episode, I'm going to say a very long sentence that makes everybody 100% certain that you and I are basically morons and you shouldn't listen to us. So that way, there's nothing here except for the stuff you really know about. Nothing's medical advice. We're just chatting, having a conversation, but trying to understand how things impact you, which I think is is definitely the goal of this conversation. You live alone or not always, or how does that work?
No, I do. I do have a 2-year-old daughter, but she's not old enough to help me out yet, though. So it just adds, I guess, I don't want to say a little bit of a ripple, but it adds a little bit of a ripple because I don't want to be going low when she's there, kind of thing. So you just, yeah, you know what? It's great. But I do live alone for the most part, and I like I said, I got Joe, but he can't help me. He just helps me get around, kind of thing. So it's mostly myself. And like I said, I have a really great diabetes educator team, endocrinologist, and a lot of my friends will help me. I'll FaceTime them and be like, hey, my technology isn't reading this. What can you see what this is, what this says, that sort of thing. And they're more than willing to help out, which is great because I know not everyone has that opportunity.
That's amazing. It really is. And your daughter's with you, not full time?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What's it like having a baby when your vision's the way yours is?
You know what? The love's there, and the parenting, nobody's perfect, but and I think she's starting to realize that dad's a little bit different because she'll point to things and she'll be trying to tell me what she wants. And sometimes I'll get it, but we sort of get there in a roundabout way. Mm-hmm. So I think she's starting to learn, but she's very helpful. She wants to put her own clothes in the laundry basket. She wants to, bath herself. And I'm like, well, you're not old enough for that, but dad will be there watching. And I'm terrified when I feed her. So I'm a little bit on the slower end doing that. And her mom's able to give her a little bit more freedom when she's over at her mom's place, because she can obviously see, right, where I'm all over her. I'm right up in her face, and I can tell she gets annoyed, but hopefully when she's a little bit older, she'll understand why I wasn't doing that to annoy her. I was more doing it to make sure you don't choke on the blueberries, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be completely normal. I'm imagining you like taking like a spoonful of something and stick it in her eye or something like that. But I don't know. I have, how much do we, this is that different road, but how, you mentioned it at the beginning for a second, but how much, latitude do you have for just being lighthearted around your sight issue? Like, is it like, if I like, you and I don't know each other, but if I would have just in the middle of that conversation now just blurted out like, you don't want to put cereal in her eye, like, would you find that amusing? Would you find that irritating? How does stuff like that rub you?
No, I just, you know what? I got pretty thick skin. That it's really good. Like I said, I do funny things, right? And there's some things that, like I've locked myself in elevators, looking for the braille to get to floor 3. Just the other night, I thought I was on the 15th floor, but I was on the 19th floor. So I was essentially trying to break into someone's apartment that I wasn't supposed to, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah.
and people are pretty good. They'll come up and see the dog or the cane. They'll be like, oh, can I help you? And that's sort of, you look to the kindness of people, and you got to trust a little bit more when you're visually impaired, because it's just the way things are, right? I mean, yeah, there's so many funny things. I have tons of stories. It's just really, really funny. I've even, you know what, I can't eat and not get food all over me. And I'm like, it could be like just chips, but I'll have like chip dust in my hair. And it's like, how did you get chip dust? Like, you know, it's just, it's really funny.
Right.
Or there's times where I'm walking around and there's food in my teeth, or there's something on my face, or even at times my shirt's on inside out and nobody has told me. And it's like, I've been walking around for 4 hours at work and nobody thought to say, hey, Ryan, your shirt's on inside. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, yeah, that's why I asked that. If I may, like, that's why I asked, because is that, like, I imagine, like, I want to imagine you in the elevator. You've pushed the wrong button. You've locked yourself in the elevator at this point. And I want to imagine you just in a personal, private moment, laughing out loud and being like, son of a bitch, I'm stuck in a goddamn elevator. And like, seeing that is amusing, but I don't know. I think people would want to see you as that being a sad thing. But what I'm trying to get at is, you don't see yourself that way, and you don't want other people to either. Is that right?
No, don't get me wrong. I have my sad days where, like, let's say, for instance, and I'm not throwing a pity party here, but I've never seen my daughter.
Yeah.
She's only 2. I don't know what she looks like. I mean, people can describe her to me, but I mean, I've never seen her. Right. So like, that makes me sad. But I know with the way technology is going, I will see again in life. Whether it's walking her down the aisle or whatever, the technology is going to be there. Maybe there's a surgery, stem cells, something. There'll be something out there that will be able to help me out. But no, I tend to just laugh it off. And there's times where I get frustrated, certainly, where it's like, oh, I used to be able to hop in my car and drive to the store, but now it's like, I got to hop on 3 buses and it takes me, 25 minutes to go, 3 kilometers down the street. Right. 3 miles down the street. But it's interesting because you just, it's all about how you look at yourself. And I just think I got a lot left to give, instead of, being angry. And people always express and take their vision loss or vision just differently. Right. And I tend to tell people, because I do work in the come to work department with the CNIB. So we prepare people for employment as visually impaired people. I think the first step is not being ashamed of your vision loss. And I'm not. It's, it's a part of me. Like I said, my brain still works, my feet, my legs still work, my arms. It's just, you do things just in a different way, right? Like 3 people might be going to the mall. The end goal is to get to the mall. I might walk, someone might drive, another person takes the bus, but we all get there. Yeah. It's just, we got there in a different way. And that's how I sort of look at where we're getting, even if it's working, where you can still do what you got to do. It's just, you might have to do it differently if you're deaf, or if you're visually impaired, or if you use a wheelchair, or if you have none of those needs. You just tend to do things a little bit differently.
I appreciate you sharing that. I do. I can see how that attitude could just apply to so many different things in life. And I of course, I didn't mean to say that you're just running around not impacted by your life. Everyone's impacted by their life. I don't want people to feel scared when they're listening. Like, it's not okay to laugh along with you, or do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying, right? You shouldn't be treating people differently because their lives are different than yours or your expectations.
Well, and you know what? More often than not, a person with any sort of disability just wants to be talked to. Like, even just if I'm standing in line and you say hello to me, it's like, I'm not. That'd be great. I'm not looking for, a whole conversation or anything, but like, it's great to just know that, oh, hi, how's it going? Good morning. Something like that. Like, we're people too. And we're just looking, as you would say hi to someone else, you just might have to say it a little differently. It's like, oh, hello. And, don't be afraid to say hello, guy with the guide dog. Like, yeah, that's my identifier. Like, I wouldn't know, you could be talking to one of the other 50 people in the Starbucks rather than me.
Right.
I would just wouldn't know. Right. Kind of thing. But that's sort of, and I get it from both ends of the table. You're just as scared to approach me as I'm probably scared to approach you, right? Kind of thing. So
100%.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Give me an example of something that you wanted to do in your life that you can't do because of your vision, and give me an example of something that you're doing that you find really valuable and wonderful that you never would have done without this happening to you.
Interesting. So, this kind of answers both of them. So forever, Ever since I was a little kid, my grandfather was, a firefighter. I wanted to be a firefighter. But think about it. Your house is on fire and heaven forbid, but your family's inside and Ryan rolls up in the fire truck and I get out with my guide dog and I'm like, hey, I'm here to save your family and, stop the fire. Like, probably not realistic, right? Like, how would you feel? You'd be like, what's going on, right? But I'm helping people. I'm helping those with a visual impairment, with advocacy issues, with come to work issues, with employment issues. So I'm still helping people. It's just in a different way.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I don't know that I'd ever be working for the CNIB if I didn't lose my vision. I don't think I'd ever be fighting for an accessible pump, fighting for these things. But you know what? Life throws you curveballs. And like I said, I played baseball and life is full of adjustments. Just as an athlete, your career is full of adjustments. So you just got to make them and kind of roll with the punches. And I know that's very cliche, but it's very, very true.
Oh, it's a cliche because if you don't do that, then you get very inflexible and things start going wrong pretty quickly. You keep saying it quickly because you're so accustomed to it, but you work at the CNIB Foundation. What's that stand for?
The Canadian National Institute for the Blind.
Nice. And how long have you been with them?
Just over 4 years. And I've been in a couple different roles there. And it's really great. We're a national organization and we're changing what it means to be blind, one life at a time. And that's what I really, really like. A lot of people have suffered through COVID, but we've actually sort of flourished in a way because we've actually been able to become the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. So now we're getting people together through Zoom and through the wonders of technology that, live in Vancouver and Halifax. They're meeting each other. Whereas before, if you lived in Halifax, you pretty much only met the blind people that lived in Halifax kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's really great to see everybody sort of get out and learn from people, right? And we're just looking to empower people to do whatever they want to do. Like, yeah, you might have to change a little bit of it, but as long as you're realistic, you can dare I say, do anything as long as you're realistic, right? Kind of thing.
Right. CNIB.ca, correct?
Yes.
That's online. Right. Excellent. I just have people that shows listen to pretty heavily in Canada. So I just want to make sure people know how to get to it, even at other places, so you can see what they're doing. How does it work in Canada? Like here, you'd be like a nonprofit. Is that the same thing there?
We are. Yes. Yeah. We're just a really big one that's been around for over 100 years.
Oh, that's so amazing. No kidding. Wow. Yes. Do you find that, I guess, let me start with this as the question. What's the instance of blindness in the population? Do you know that?
Ooh, I don't want to give you bad numbers. I can't speak to that. Can I say?
I don't know. You can say
moderate. I don't even know how to answer that, unfortunately. Just because there's so many different eye conditions and blindness is a spectrum, right? So it's not like, oh, Ryan can't see and that's blindness, right? There's a lot of people between your vision and my vision that might consider themselves visually impaired, maybe not blind, but visually impaired. So it's kind of, I don't want to say misrepresented, but there's a lot of in between that, maybe accounted for, maybe not. And it's, we do service a lot of people though. We help them out and we provide support for tons of people all around the country.
So yeah, I've had people on who have all levels of sight. And I've had those, there's a gentleman on at one point who drives, but I guess technically that's like you said, it's some version of their sight is restricted to some degree. And I don't, whether or not that continues to, or if they find that, but these new treatments now are really good at like holding people's sight where they are. Is that right?
Yeah. Even some of the stuff that they, my eye doctors and ophthalmologists were telling me like, oh, we wish this was kind of around back then because we would have liked to see how it worked on you. There's a lot of different treatments out there and they're only getting better.
Yeah.
Which is really great.
Wow. Is there any, are there any sight issues in your family line? Like, is this the first time this has happened, or has this happened to somebody in the past?
No, I like to be the trailblazer. It's just me. So, my father and, everybody kind of wears glasses as they, get a little bit older in life, a little more seasoned. But for the most part, everybody is, we'll say, I don't like this word, but air quotes, normal vision. So it's just kind of me. So I'm the guinea pig.
Wow. How How much of the day are you ever away from your dog? Or are you never away from your guide dog?
So interesting question, but so a guide dog, picture a police officer, right? So when you're in uniform, you're a police officer, but when you're at home and you're not in uniform, you're just a regular man or woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it is with a guide dog. So he's here right now, but he's really just a well-trained pet because he's not in vest. So he knows the difference. And that's a kudos to all the guide dog trainers out there, right? That they're able to teach this brilliant animal that, right? So he's usually nearby, but when I leave my house, I pretty much just only he leads me everywhere. So he'll be in vest, that sort of thing.
But inside the house, you just, he's a pet to you, and you don't like, is there a task in the house where you're ever like thinking like, I got to get the vest on him and get him helping me? Or does that not usually happen like that?
Actually, so we had a scare a few months ago. The fire alarm went on, and I actually had my daughter. So I was like, okay, I got to get my daughter strapped to my chest. And then I got to get him prepared because he needs to lead me. Like if I put his leash on him and he doesn't have his vest, he's like, oh, good, we're going for a walk. I can sniff things. I can do things, but like, no, this is an emergency, right? So it's kind of lesson learned, right? Keep things by the door. You need to be prepared. But, for the most part, I always leave with extra time, that sort of thing, because I know that typically I do things a little bit slower, right? We have to stop at every corner because he's trained to, because he doesn't know if the light's green or red, or if it's our turn to cross. I have to make that decision. So it's very interesting, and you go through a lot of training, and the animals have gone through a ton of training as well. So you work as a team. You learn I've had him for just about a year now, and we're sort of hitting our stride. So we're kind of in each other's head, and he kind of knows what I want him to do, and I know what he wants me to do because he sends me little signals as well.
Do you ever finish something and just think to yourself, God, that was just a hell of an accomplishment? I mean, are you ever proud of yourself? Like, and a fire alarm goes off, you've got a 2-year-old with you, and you've got to strap up your guide dog and get out of a building. Like, did you get outside and think to yourself, I'm amazing? Like, because like, or does that not strike you that way?
I was very proud of myself in that moment, but I didn't put shoes on her. So she was strapped to, and I'm like, oh my goodness, now like you're hurting my back. She's big, she's getting bigger, right? So it's like, oh, I can't even put you on the ground now because we're outside. Luckily it was, July. It's not the middle of February where she would have been freezing, but again, lesson learned. Like, what if that happens now? It's getting colder out. No, I actually, it took me all day, but I built a bed frame. And obviously I can't read the instructions. It was like, okay, I got to feel this piece. I think this piece is this. And you know what? There was some trial and error where I had to take parts of it apart and be like, oh, I did that backwards or whatever. But you know what? I set the extra time aside and I did it. Even with my pump, back to the diabetes. Sometimes when I have to rewind and change my reservoir set, sometimes it takes me 4 minutes because I have a good days. Other time it takes me half an hour to change it because I screw up and I got to wait for the pump to reset itself. But you know what? I'm proud of myself every day. I do that too.
I'm telling you, if I was you, I would have put that bed frame together. I would have stood up and pounded on my chest and been like, I'm goddamn Superman. I'm just going to tell you all right now, without being able to see this bed, I put it together. And then, by the way, later at night when I went to sit on it, I would for a minute think, I better be careful. A blind guy put this bed together. I would have that moment.
Right. That was my thoughts. Though I was laying in it that night. I'm like, am I going to be crumpled up in the morning and in just a disaster of a pile of metal and wood here?
Just thump on the floor and you're like, yeah, that was predictable. But no, I mean, it's not. It's just like, to me, like, I'm amazed by what you're telling me, and not amazed like, I don't know what the word is. I'm not pitying.
I promise. Yeah. I promise. I'm just a guy. I put my pants on one leg at a time in the morning, just like everybody else. It's just, you know what? I just might not know if they match my shirt. So it's really,
exactly.
Yeah, you know what? You just learn to do things differently in life. And that's how I'm navigating through my diabetes journey too. You just really learn to do things differently. And you know what? It's more what blindness has taught me. It's more about the journey, not the end product, right? It was always like we're so concentrated on the end and how quickly we get there. I sort of take my time and smell the roses and hey, let's do it. But it's about the journey. How am I going to do it now?
Do you ever consider sending your daughter to like TrialNet, for example, to see if she has genetic markers for type 1? Is that something you
it scares the life out of me all the time. I haven't thought about it, but I'm just hoping that there's some sort of like cure or something. Knock on wood, I hope she never ever gets it, but if she does, I'm hoping that there's something out there that will help. Yeah. That's one thing I don't want for her.
No, I wouldn't imagine. It's just, there's ways to see if people have genetic markers, and those markers can tell you your, within reason, your percentage of chance. And I just didn't know if that would be something you'd want to know about so that you could pre-plan for it, or if you would prefer not to know about it and just kind of live on the side of hope. But if you haven't thought about it, you're not going to have an answer to that question. So
yeah, good. It's a really good question. I'm probably going to be thinking about it all day now, but no, it's something to consider. Definitely.
No, it's just very, I mean, everybody feels the same. I've never asked that question of anybody who hasn't had a very similar answer, just like, I don't know, like that sounds scary. And on the other side of it, I can see the adult part of it where you'd want to know and be prepared. And like, I can see everyone's argument, for either side of that. And I just didn't know if it was something you'd ever considered or not. Parents alive?
Yes,
they are. How often are you with them? I'm wondering how, even if you're not like together, I guess my question is that has your blindness created a scenario where they feel overly responsible for you still in a way that you might not of a 35-year-old? That's really my question.
Yes and no. I don't see my mom often because she lives across the border. She lives in Michigan. So it's been closed for 19 months. She hasn't been able to kind of come across, right? And I do feel bad for her because she's missing out on little Abby's life. She hasn't really seen, she hasn't got to see her grow up except for through FaceTime, right? Yeah. My dad lives in Windsor with me. He comes over, let's say once a week or something, but it's interesting. At times he'll see 21-year-old sighted scholarship athlete Ryan. And then other times he'll see poor, helpless, blind guy Ryan. And I say that loosely, but it's, it's interesting that he will want to do things for me. And, hey dad, if you're listening, I'm sorry, you're not getting any younger. You got to let me lift those heavy things, but he always wants to help. Right. Mm. But you know what, I have to tell him like my legs and arms work. I mean, if I'm carrying groceries and I run into the wall, that's on me. That's not on you. But you know what? Hey, lesson learned. So he does. It comes and goes, because other times you'll be like, oh, you can do that by yourself. And I'm like, thank goodness. Thank you. Yes, I can. Yeah. But other times it's, let me do that for you. Hey, let me, I'll get this, I'll open this pop for you. It's so I can open a pop can or whatever kind of thing. Right. So it's, I love him so much for it, all the help. And, I don't think I want you to stop helping me, Dad, but it's just interesting, right? Because I get it. I'm his kid and he wants to help out, and he's still, he does quite a bit, but it's, I'm good. I promise I'm good. I just might take longer or do things differently.
Not that this has anything to do with your situation, but my wife was telling me about this story the other day where a 90-year-old woman who was still living on her own, voluntarily moved into a nursing facility to help take care of her 70-year-old child. And I was just like, yeah, see, that's the thing about being a parent right there. You know what I mean? Like, look, it just never leaves you. I found that fascinating. But I appreciate
I worry. I'm like, oh my goodness, am I going to get like this with Abby? Is this what I have to look forward to? And she's going to, not say hate me, but, hate me for wanting to help or doing. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. They don't hate you. They'll act annoyed by it. But then, if it goes away right away, they're like, oh, where were you on this? Like,
exactly. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah. I have kids, 17 and 21. So, I've seen it both ways. I've seen them kind of push away help, and I've seen them say, no, I really need this, it always happens in weird places. And yeah, it's going to happen to you too. It happens to everybody. I don't know. I was like stunned. I was like, I'm 90 and I'm living on my own. And I'm like, no, I'll go into a home to help my child. I was like, wow, that's really crazy. All right. Well, Ryan, listen, I want to ask you, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to, that I didn't get to?
No, I've had a great time. This has been a great chat, and no, thank you. Just yeah, no, honestly, this has been
I'm not
wonderful.
pushing, I'm not pushing you away. I just want to make sure that we didn't because sometimes I get, I don't know, I get distracted and I start asking questions about things that I think most people don't give a crap about, but I just find interesting as we're talking. How did, who reached out to me and said, I think you should be on this show? I'm forgetting the pathway that you got here.
So we, Diabetes Canada had a lot of interaction, and I'm sure they all listen, or most of them listen to your podcast. And then they are working with the CNIB on an accessible insulin pump project.
Got it.
And my coworker, Kat Hamilton, my colleague, she said, Ryan, I think you should go on this. And I did some research, and I'm like, I would love to go on this. And so she actually reached out to you and said, I think you should have Ryan on the show. And it kind of just spiraled from there. And here we are.
Yeah, that's excellent. So let me finish up by asking you this: like, in your perfect world, let's start with an insulin pump. What should an insulin pump do, or have, or offer that would be valuable to you?
I think that the marketers, the design teams, and the engineers should think about making it accessible from the get-go, not just for a visually impaired, but like, hey, what about an elderly person that wears glasses and can't see the small print? I think that the universal design concept should really be kind of in there, right? Hey, take it out of the box, and with a few adjustments, let's whoever can choose whatever kind of options you need, then you can use them, right? Because it's like, I think of it in terms of an elevator, right? So an elevator was originally designed for people that can't use stairs to get to the second floor. But now in a pre-COVID world, if you lived in an office building, or if you worked in an office building, I bet you took an elevator every day, not even thinking about it. They've just come second place and second nature. I would love for all medical devices, but especially an insulin pump, to be like that. Let's not even think about it. It's just there.
Yeah.
I know that's, a very simplistic approach. There's approvals, there's Health Canada, there's this, there's that, there's all kinds of different things that it has to go through, but don't be worried about the money that you put forth. Like, do it because it's expensive and it takes a long time, but just think about me with the bed. I made the bed. It was difficult, but look, it's working. So I think there's a lot of people that would come out of the woodwork and say, like, there's tons of people that I know in Canada that won't go and use a pump because they know it's not accessible, and they're worried about their vision and their health and going low, going high in the middle of the night, and not to be dire, but not waking up the next morning.
Sure. No.
So it's, even for me to tell how much battery life is in my pump, or what time it is with my pump, right? Pretty much my pump is a fancy insulin pen. It just pumps insulin to me all the time, but I can't use the really cool functions. And that's what I would like to be able to do. Whether or not I tend to use all of them, I would like to be the gatekeeper of that decision, not someone else that designed the pump thinking, oh, here, this is going to be great for everybody, but it's only great for, 8 out of 10 people.
So would it be helpful to you if the device is moved solely into a cell phone? Because then text to speech would be more easy. Like, I'm imagining if you could run your insulin pump from your cell phone, and you can run your CGM from your cell phone, then it wouldn't be difficult for these companies to build coding that would allow you to say, like, hey, my phone, what's my blood sugar? And have it tell you that. Or
absolutely. That's where it goes. And, there's a lot of security a lot of security concerns and things like that. Right. But I mean, we can do all of our banking on our phone, and we can do all of our other things on our phone. So why can't we do this?
Yeah.
You look at it, and we're working there. And some of the pump companies have even reached out and said, like, hey, like, we're going to be able to do this. Right. We're looking into apps, and they're in trial and this and that. And it's really, really awesome. That's what I would love, is just to, when you look at it, Apple and Android have done the hard work for you. They have talkback and voiceover that really, I can almost do anything. I can surf Facebook. I can send text messages. I can send emails. I can dial phone numbers. I'm on my smartphone right now on a Zoom call with you, and it's completely accessible, right? So they've done the hard work by integrating the voice for you. So let's look at this and say, how can we move forward from your end on just making buttons like, oh, I want to give myself 4 units of insulin. How does that look on a pump? Or sorry, not a pump, on a smartphone app? Or hey, your average A1C is this. Like, how can we do that, right? Like, I understand graphs are probably never going to be accessible for me, just based on my side. I'm not speaking for everybody visually impaired, but it's
be tough.
There's got to be other ways.
Yeah. Well, well, let me ask you a question. If the graph was not even in Braille, but just so that you could, if it was raised, wouldn't you be able to kind of feel like, here's where the insulin went in, here's where I started going up? Wouldn't that be valuable to you?
Like a tactile graph? Yes,
yeah.
It would. Like even giving me the option to print one, right? Because I think that would be great. Like, I don't think there's a way to do that with the phone screen, but yeah, for sure. Like, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
One I hadn't even considered before.
Do you have a printer that prints raised?
I'm lucky because I work for the Institute for the Blind, so I could do it at work. They're very expensive at this point. It's kind of, I don't want to say new technology, but making them smaller and Bluetooth. And so like there are Braille embossers, but traditionally they were big and bulky and cost thousands of dollars, and they still do, but now they're desktop models. So I could see it becoming a little bit more reasonable and affordable in the future.
Right.
But yeah, I'll truth be told, not a lot. One of the major myths is that everybody that's blind uses Braille, and that's not the case. I learned Braille to read Abby books. People in my scenario usually don't learn Braille because you have your voice, you have your audiobooks, you have those things. But I think the missed key messaging is that no matter how technologically savvy we get or we use, Braille is our version of print. And just for you, like a print document's never going to lose its value. There's always going to be a signature required on it or something different, right? Mail delivered in your mailbox, that sort of thing. And I think that's the equivalent for a visually impaired person is the Braille.
Yeah, I was just really imagining. I mean, I know what I've learned from looking at the Dexcom graphs for my daughter, and there's so much to be inferred from them. And you start to understand how to use insulin differently. And, I'm going to say better by seeing the impacts visually. It really is. But you could, if you had that graph, I'm imagining you with like the last 3 hours of your blood sugars and the knowledge of where did I put the insulin, where did the food go in, and being able just to feel that rise and kind of imagine it in your mind. I would imagine you could do a better job with your insulin after having those experiences over and over again. So my point is,
and just think of it even in a simpler terms. And I'm not trying to be nosy here, but does your daughter use a CGM?
She does. She uses you're lovely. You're not trying to be nosy. You can ask me whatever you want, Ryan. She's using the Dexcom G6 right now.
So when she tests her sugar, I don't know if she ever gives you a look, but there's always arrows next to it, right? So there's either like 3 going up, which means your blood sugar is going up a lot, or there's like 1 going down, you're starting to get low. Maybe you should, eat something. Like there's those arrows. Up until recently, I had no idea those arrows were there because it didn't read anything out to me. But even that information would be so awesome to know. And it's changed. Like even with the Libre, now it'll say, oh, you're 8.1 and your blood sugar is rising rapidly. So at least now I know. It's like, oh, I probably should correct this, right?
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just the arrows were there for the sighted world to see, but not for Ryan to use.
No, there's a lot of low hanging fruit here for you if people would get on board and work towards it. It sounds like to me.
Agreed. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. All right. I'm going to ask you one silly question before we get done. Because you have to wait for something to be read to you when you're looking at Facebook, do you ever get halfway through somebody's thought and think, oh, what a waste of time. I can't believe I put much effort into you know what I mean?
I'll do you one better. I don't know if you use Twitter, but like you can put emojis in your name in Twitter, and some people go crazy where it's my screen reader will read out emojis. It'll be like, oh, smiling face and kissy face and heart-shaped eyes face. Like it reads out all of them, and they all have different descriptors. But it's funny because some people use them wrong. They're like, oh, for one of my friends, she kept sending me a distressed face. I'm like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm sending you smiley faces. I'm like, they're described to me as distressed face. Like I was seriously worried for you. But back on Twitter, if you put more than like 3 emojis in front of your name, I won't even read what you're writing because I don't get to skip over. It's like this emoji, that emoji, this emoji, that emoji, this emoji, that emoji, Ryan Hui wrote, and then you get into it. But legitimately, you could be waiting there for like, and this doesn't seem long, but 16 seconds as it goes through emojis. And I'm like, no, skip.
Well, yeah, well, it definitely seems long if then the tweet is just not valuable at all. And you're like, oh my God, I sat through eggplant poop, blah, 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 so that I could get
exactly.
I could get this crap. I don't know. I can find myself, I'm picturing myself being like, oh my God, just so irritated. I know when you start reading some things that people write and you get halfway through, you're like, oh, there's time I'm never going to get back. And I know to stop reading it now. So that's amazing. Dude,
there's those Facebook posts where it's just a picture. Like there's something called alternate text. So I put them in all of my pictures. So it'll describe loosely what's in the picture. Ryan sitting with Abigail on her lap. That's pretty much all you need to know. And then my visually impaired friends, they love it because they can enjoy the picture. They can't enjoy it like you would, but it's a different way, right? But then there's some people that just post a picture, and it's 9 times out of 10 because people just don't know. They're like, oh, blind people don't use Facebook or whatever, right? So it's they don't put anything, so it's just it's a picture of their kids on their first day of school, but all they do is post the picture, and I just scroll through it because it's like, oh, this is a photo and it might have trees in it and that, so it kind of describes it to me, but it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it really is something. All right, man, listen, this was terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Anytime. Hopefully you'll have me back at some point.
Well, I don't normally have people back, Ryan, but maybe I will.
Oh, fair enough.
It's not because people aren't great. It's because just like you run tell people for a second, you have a podcast too, right? That's not about what else do you do?
Yeah. So it's an internet radio show, and it's every Friday at 3:15 Eastern. And it's all about audiobooks. It's a 15-minute segment on a bigger show that's every day during the week. And it's through Accessible Media Incorporated, and they're out of Toronto, and they're a television and an audio kind of channel. And what they do is all their programming is in described definition for the blind and closed caption for the deaf.
Yeah,
on
cool.
screen. So, and we do different lifestyle tips and tricks and hacks and that sort of stuff for the blind world.
Yeah.
And so mine's the fun one. I get audiobooks every Friday afternoon. Hey, here's what you should be reading. Here's some cool news. Here's, where you can get the books, that sort of thing. So we do it every Friday at 3:15, and you can catch it at amiaudio.ca. Listen live.
No, and I bring that up because you'll have an appreciation for the fact that it is October 18th right now. And if you contacted me today and you weren't you know what I mean? Like I have like a couple of VIP days held aside so I can always slide stuff in. But if you're just a regular person trying to come on the show, I think the next availability is in May of 2022 right now to record. So
that's a good situation to be in.
Yeah. So I'm good. Listen, that's amazing. But that's why I never end up having people back again, because I don't even know when to slide them in. When am I going to do this?
Of course. Well, you're very busy, but let's keep in touch. We'll keep it at that.
No,
then.
For you though, I say differently, because I want to hear about you getting locked in an elevator again. I have to be honest. I want us to get very close, Ryan, so that we can have I want to have a conversation with you one day that would be a conversation that you might have amongst 3 people who are in your situation. Do you know what I mean? Like I really want to see behind how your life works in a way where we're not what am I saying? Like we're everyone is understandably careful about talking about things because you don't want to insult people. You don't want to assume your situation on somebody else's. Like I get all that, but I feel like there's a back room to your life that's hilarious and I'm not hearing about it. So I think maybe if we learn know more about each other, it might come out as we're talking. Or am I wrong?
Sounds great.
Am I wrong?
No, it sounds great. I got tons of stories. There's all kinds. Yep, absolutely. And it's just, even if it's every day, Ryan just does silly things, right? There's been times where, I thought I was going to eat an apple, but it was an onion. Like just simple things like that, right? And I know that sounds strange, but now I've kind of got my bearings underneath me, but you know what? Best laid plans always go to waste. So absolutely, I'm more than willing to talk about those.
Listen, Ryan, you don't know me well enough, but I stopped from asking you about having sex while you were blind. I stopped myself for an hour and 8 minutes. So I'm super proud of myself right now. And I'm just going to say goodbye. Okay.
All right.
That's really what I wanted to ask you pretty much the entire time. And yet I was an adult and I did not do it. But seriously though, I really appreciate you doing this. I really do. This is really just a different conversation for me. So
You wouldn't be the first person to ask me those questions. So yeah, absolutely. We'll touch base.
Yeah. All right. Hold on 1 second.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, huge thanks to Ryan for coming on the show and sharing his story with us. I also want to thank the Contour Next One blood glucose meter and remind you to go to contournext.com/juicebox. And of course, US Med. Get that white glove treatment at usmed.com/juicebox or by calling 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits check today. Don't delay. Today and don't delay. They rhyme. And if you want to check out the place where Ryan works, it's cnib.ca. Not .com. It's from the Canada. It's different. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. In the meantime, you should check out the podcast Facebook page, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. It's a private Facebook page with 25,000 people in it. Those people are just like you. They use insulin or love someone who uses insulin, and they're just trying to figure things out. And they're in there helping each other. And I stop by quite a little bit. I'm like the neighbor in a sitcom who's, comes by once or twice every episode. I'm just like, I stick my head in the door. I'm like, hey, what's up, everybody? And then I say something funny, or I help with something, or I'm even a sounding board sometimes. Then I'm gone, poof. And then it's back to the regulars, to people who really, are the heart and soul of the show, which are, in this case, the people in that Facebook group. Really a special group of people. Check it out. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. It's a private group, so you'll have to answer a couple of questions coming in to make sure that you're a real person. When it asks you where you heard about it, for people who heard about it here, let's put a code word in. And I'll know you guys heard about it here. And then I will just let you in immediately. I'll be like, these people heard about this in episode 667. A code word. How about just 667? That'd be easy. Where did you hear about it? Episode 667. Boom, you're right through. All right. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.